My name is Jennifer McIntyre, and I'm super excited about this episode. We have one of our guests that's been on before back with us. Since that time, I feel like we've truly become friends, which
Yes.
is
Yes.
absolutely amazing. And we're back to specifically talk about something that was mentioned in the last episode that we're very excited about because Lenny's book actually comes out August 17th.
11th.
11th. 11th.
August
I
11th.
do apologize.
That's
That's
okay.
even sooner than expected. But that being said, we were blessed, both Derek and I, to receive a copy of it prior to its release, and have spent the last week or so reading it, which has been phenomenal. And we were just kind of discussing a little bit off screen how much I enjoyed the book, how approachable I felt the book was as far as a read is concerned and how important that is. But yeah, welcome back. We're
Thanks,
very
Jen.
excited to
Thanks,
have
Derek.
you.
Yes.
Derek read the book as well.
Yeah, and again, I did the audio, and I said to myself the night that you sent it to me, if you have not watched Devil Wears Prada, there's a scene where Anne Hathaway has to get the manuscript for Harry Potter, and I was sitting there and I'm thinking, oh my God, I have arrived. I'm getting books before they have been released. I mean, talk about popularity here, but no, the book was phenomenal, and for a human that I do not read all the time, as we've discussed prior. Not only did I finish the whole book, but I was excited to get home, sit down, have a coffee or a little slushy. We have a slushy machine, so we make those nice slushies, and sit and hear the book. I really, really enjoyed it. I think that just hurrah to you and your producer, because I do want to give her credit. And please, if you could say her name for us real quick.
And everybody from Carissa Hayes, who's my publicist, and Kelsey Merritt Roa, and Grace O'Grady, all the way through to the publisher, Frederick Douglass Books, distributor Simon & Schuster, everybody from Kia Harris, and the whole team that worked on the editing of the book and the art of the book and everything else. I just want to say thank you very much to every single one of
and
them.
again, it's a team, and that's why I wanted to say that, because it's important to know. Sometimes we're so busy we forget all the people behind the
absolutely.
background
Well,
are
trust me,
equally as important as the face.
They don't
to
forget
it.
me, and I don't forget them with all the emails and texts that go back and
Absolutely.
forth. So they have been
and
very
you guys
supportive.
will see and hear why it is such a good read throughout this, and why it is a must for you to get the book. It's highly encouraged. And what I also said before we jump into the questions is, when I mean easy read, as somebody that's not into politics on an everyday, it's not my job or career, I was able to relate and understand as an American citizen what it meant, and then the breakdown of why it meant that. And that's what I really appreciated, is that you created a book that people can just adapt and relate to that no matter what affiliation you are.
Well, and I appreciate you both taking the time to read the book, having me on both times, but also sharing those kind words about the book. I've heard the readability of the book from those that interviewed me for the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Library. Now, that will be featured on August 12th. I'm sure there'll be a recording that people can go find as well, all the way through to podcasters. Derek and I, you and I were talking about how I was on Meghan McCain's podcast just last week, August 5th, and how we got similar feedback, how they said the same thing on Newsmax, how they're saying the same thing on the left and on the right. And to me, that was what I was trying to go for, something that people could see themselves in, can see that the totality of the American story in, but in a way that both relates to modern day politics without being a wonky book.
Yeah.
So your words, sir, are very, very humbling to me. I appreciate them. And yours, the message that you sent me, Jen, when you said, this book reminds me to have hope about my country, and sometimes it's hard to do. That is why I specifically wanted a Venn diagram of one to come out in 2026, because this should be a moment where we're reflecting upon what the country is, and then subsequently trying to pick direction we want our country to go in as a collective unit that's being the best of us. And so for you to say, this book reminded me to have hope, it really did sit me down for a second and say, okay, I hit that note when it came to how we put the book together.
And that's truly the main overwhelming feeling that I felt once I finished it.
Yeah.
Was I felt hopeful for America. I love our country. I love the citizens of this country, but it it is difficult at times to keep that positivity about where we're going as a nation. So I instantly wanted to read it again because I felt
Wow.
uplifted and energized. And some that do know me have known that I am involved or have been involved in local politics. And I kind of became disgruntled with it. And reading the book, I was like, do you know what I was doing was important, and what everyone is doing as an American citizen is important. And they need to take hope from books like this, Lenny. I mean, it was a really, really good read.
I really appreciate you doing that. I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you reading it and your kind words as well. And I'm hoping everybody out there will go get a copy of the Venn diagram of one, because I didn't write it for one side or another. I didn't write it for one faction of the country. I mean, I wrote it and I teased us with being Yinzers, if you will, but I also wrote it as somebody that spent time on the south side of Chicago, somebody that went to school in North Carolina, but also somebody that can both relate to the Republican Party and African Americans, people that can relate to poor people, but also dropouts. I talked about my time being a deli clerk at Giant Eagle. That's not something you usually hear somebody in a shirt and tie talk about, but it's important to be able to talk about the second acts that we all have. It's important to talk about the first acts, the acts that you might be a little ashamed of. You might look back on and say, man, that was a really tough time. Young people today absolutely positively need to hear that story. And one of the things that they said during the Reagan Foundation interview was, this book is a great book for people in their 20s. And that was humbling for me to hear as well.
I can see that for sure.
Mhm.
Melissa Giller, and hat tip to Melissa Giller out there with the Reagan Foundation out in California and her full team out there. Thank you for the opportunity to have somebody from my family tree to be mentioned in a presidential library. I mean, just that alone is pretty cool to me.
Yeah.
But when she mentioned that the book is really good for 20-somethings to read, and she encouraged people, buy a copy for yourself, buy a copy for somebody you know in their 20s because of the life lessons in there. That's what I was writing for. I wasn't writing to be the smartest politician. I'm not writing to run for the presidency in 2028. I was writing to remind us of who we are and what statesmanship can do, what leadership can do, and what we all can do together.
I mean, if you were, as a favor, I would only find it suitable for you to announce that here today.
No pressure, though, right?
But before we get into the questions, I also wanted to say, for me, the morality of the book, basic principles, respecting people, and also there's a phrase, and again, you hit some of the hardest hits for me, even closer towards the beginning of the book. And one thing that was said was how many things you've turned away because of your moral compass. And that, for me, is the type of leader I want in a country or in an elected position, because we don't have to agree on everything. But that is what makes you a good leader for me. I don't have to agree, but to know that overall, you're going to guide every human and race in this country. And that for me was the biggest thing of peace, because right now I feel we're in a time to where on all sides, there's a lot of selfishness, there's a lot of greed. And when you have that, how can you ever be a good leader? Because part of being a leader is also knowing when to follow.
Yes.
And that was for me, my personal take. And I think it makes sense when they say about the 20-year-olds, because right now that's what they're craving.
Yeah, they're looking for genuine leadership. They're looking for people that stand for something and still remembers the everyday things that they're struggling with.
Absolutely.
And there's a reason why we've seen this oscillation over the last 10 to 15 years politically, where it's gone from center right, center left, MAGA, Tea Party, MAGA, then now to the far left. And you're seeing young people say, we've been going back and forth for 25 years. We'll be reflecting upon 9/11 in September. That was 25 years ago.
It's crazy.
There are certain generations that have seen nothing but angst and pain and confusion and interruption and hard times economically. I mean, they went through the Great Recession. They went through the recession after 9/11. They went through the recession after COVID. They have seen this party tear itself apart on racial issues, social issues. They've seen mass shootings. They've seen war. They've seen political, fights all the time as well. It's very easy for them to believe that the American dream is no longer viable.
Yeah.
So
and you actually bring that up in
Yes.
the
Mhm.
book.
yes,
Mhm.
Yeah. Talking about
Yeah.
how, what were the exact percentages when that poll was
I mean,
taken?
it's still going up past 33% and beyond, and that's dangerous because those are our future leaders. The American dream has worked for people all across our country. It hasn't worked at the same exact pace. That's a problem. And it hasn't worked with the same exact validity. That's a problem. You know, there are certain constitutional and civil rights that we all should enjoy as American citizens. But as long as you believe in the promise of the American dream, it's viable, it's a North Star, and it's something that we should be chasing, that pursuit of happiness. It's talked about in the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
That North Star needs to be those God-given rights and protecting those God-given rights for everybody. Now, you talked about morality, Derek, and I know we want to get to the questions, but you talked about morality, and part of the morality that I wanted to talk about, both spiritually and secularly in the book,
Mhm.
is a focus of we should be rooting for every American. Spiritually, I should be rooting for everybody to go to heaven. As a Christian, as a Catholic, that's my job. I want everybody to go to heaven. I want not one person to go elsewhere. Secularly, I want every American to succeed in a way that's going to be contributory to what we're doing as a nation. If you keep that level of morality, how could we go wrong collectively? That's what I was trying to remind people
Yeah.
of in the book.
But again, it's just relatable. Jen, you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to get
So I
to
think
these
it's a
questions,
perfect entry into question one,
which
actually.
we've actually pared down because I really want to concentrate on some of the concepts in the book. And I
Yes.
know we're limited on time, and I really want to get those across so that it gives our listeners a very good overview of what they're going to find in the book. But you organize the book, which again is a Venn diagram of one, around security, empowerment, and opportunity in that order. Why does security have to come first? And what happens when we try to create opportunity without establishing the other? Why are they so enjoined?
Well, they're enjoined, Jen, and they're enjoined with security first. You don't have security in your personhood, you don't have security in your citizenship, and your potential in life is not secure. There is no way to be empowered. And if you're not empowered, there's no way to take opportunity and make the most of it.
Mm-hmm.
You can find chances, and there's a difference between having a chance and having an opportunity. A chance is something that comes along, you don't really get a chance to control, you just kind of fall into it. It happens, it's brief, you can't grow from it, you can't really learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Power is controlling something, sometimes against its will. It's not something that's natural, it's not a natural strength, it's not something that can be shared. It's just you have power or I have power. Empowerment is different. Empowerment means we all have a level of strength that we can work together with. But if you're not secure in your personhood, you're not secure in your citizenship and your belonging in America, and you're not secure in the potential that you can go have hope, you can go act on that hope, and then you can pivot into other opportunities if you need to. If those things aren't secure, you can't get the other two.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you drew a lot of, you made a very clear distinction between power and empowerment
Yes.
in the book, repeatedly. And it really made me think about the concept and the differences between those two, which I really appreciated taking
So
the
it
time
worked.
to. Yeah, absolutely.
The way that you did it.
Yeah.
Because it makes you think. And I do, in this question, I think this is really important for especially the younger generation out there. You know, you talked about the security and the empowerment and why it's important to work. When you have a generation, though, that can't see that in their leaders across the board, how do you feel we can change it fast enough that it can re-grab them to be inspired by the country that they live in? And because when I talk to people, you have to, eat faith, prime example of faith, right? When you believe in faith and you walk that, your body naturally instills itself. You feel a part of something. So how do you get that generation to believe that they belong here, that they have a place here? When you hear 22, I have clients that are 22 years old and they said, I'm going to work until I die. I know that. I'm just already accepting that. Or, there's this or that problem or you start hearing you say, I don't think America is the greatest country in the world anymore. I don't believe
so
that.
Sad.
But I could see where their belief. So when we're talking about security empowerment, we're talking about they feel unsecure,
Yep.
unpowered.
Yep.
How do we, our generation and political future political components that are running to better the world, how do we start devising who deserves to be in those roles and who doesn't, so we can re-empower them
Well,
again?
first of all, Derek, Jen and I both appreciate the fact that you said our generation. You made us both 35 years
I
old.
know. Listen, I'm
I
40.
appreciate
Now
that
that I've
very
hit
much.
40, I feel like everybody from 40 to 60 is in the same
Well,
generation. Okay.
Look, I'm a man of a certain age. I'm going to take that too. So thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
We have to redefine leadership. And right now, leadership in America is the person that has the greatest following. It's the person that's viral. It's the person with the title. One of the things that both drove me to write a Venn diagram of one, but I also have to remember, even as I look back at the finished product and the promotion of the book and the like, is what I wrote about and what we need are not items that will ever go viral. They'll have value. They can make us victorious, but they're not necessarily going to make us viral. And right now we live in a society where the viral aspect of what people say, what people do, and how people react drive public opinion and, more often than not, drive civics and public policy. And as a result, we're hollowing out the foundation upon which young people could stand upon and go find their dreams. What I would encourage us to do is, number one, we have to redefine leadership, which means we're going to redefine who we put into key roles of leadership. Number two, once you take those individuals, you have to have a certain sense of statesmanship. You have to be able to, in those roles, provide the opportunity for people to see the vision of where they want to go on a regular basis. What's the old expression? If you can see it, you can believe it.
Yeah.
So that hasn't changed. We don't do that enough anymore. We follow what we see on our phones and what we see on our screens. We follow what people yell about and what people argue about. As a result, we have, again, hollowed out that foundation. We have to get to a point in time where leadership inspires people, works with all different types of individuals, and doesn't quit on people. Again, I bring this up a lot. I brought this up in a speech in July in Dallas, Texas, with teachers. I reminded them that they're teaching kids in their first act to be ready for the second act that those kids are going to have in life.
Yeah.
America is a second act nation full of biographies of people that screwed up in their teens, screwed up in their 20s, maybe even screwed up in their 50s, but then eventually found a way to be great. And one of the examples I brought up was young George Washington. I know there's a movie about young George Washington that's out there. When people look at the biography of George Washington, he was a hothead. Nobody thinks of George Washington, the person that stepped down after the second presidential term, the person that was the guiding force during the drafting of the founding documents, as a hothead.
Yeah.
In fact, if he were a hothead, those documents don't look the way they do in this country, probably is not here the way it is, because people forget another tempered person, Abraham Lincoln, looked at the example of people such as Washington in order to guide the country through the Civil War. But you got to allow people to have the second acts, and you can't do that without allowing people to be able to see where they're going. So back to your question, Derek, we have to redefine what leadership is in America in the 21st century.
Yeah.
We have to reinstitute statesmanship, and then we have to re-spark vision.
You know, real quick before we question, me and Jen had the honor, as we said earlier, of interviewing Bishop Jackson, and one of his heroes. One of the questions Jen had asked is George. If you were to be able to sit down and interview anybody, who would you interview? And he said George Washington, and he explained why. But what hit me the most about that is he said what I admired about him was that he always believed that no one man should have all power. And it's crazy just to see that dynamic of back then and the powers on both sides now on that, and how, again, you go back into the greed. So there definitely needs to be a balance. On to question two, I think here. You organize much of the book, you write about losing speaking opportunities, financial support, and political relationships after taking positions that didn't align with the people who were expected to be your side. Was there ever a moment when the personal costs made you question whether standing on principle was always worth it?
Going back to that morality.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say definitely over the course of a quarter of a century, no, because there's this woman by the name of Lenny McAllister that when you have a soulmate and a friend that's also your spouse,
Mm.
that allows you to take the right stand and they don't even doubt it. I mean, it makes it easier, even though it's hard. I'll never forget there was one of those type of incidences, and everybody thought I was going to do one thing out of desperation, and I did what she knew I would do. And I had explained to her, this is what happened, and both with confidence. It sounds like a threat, but it was with confidence. She said, yeah, I knew you'd do that, because if you didn't do that, I'd be questioning everything in our relationship.
Aw.
Think about that.
Yeah.
She knew me so well that she knew what I would do on faith and on ethics and morality. And I knew that I could do it because I can go home, whether it cost me $100,000 or a lifetime opportunity. I knew that I could take the stance for the right reasons. And as a result, she would catch my back.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt it anymore. I haven't doubted it in 3 decades, because I've had to follow the trail magic in my life and say, okay, God, you have me on this path for a reason. For whatever reason, I'm not getting some of the things that others may get, but what you have for me is for me. And the mission you have for me is for me. And then I end up having opportunities and experiences I would have never imagined. I mean, again, for example, I write a Venn diagram of one, and it's prompted because 2 of my mentors pass away in their 50s. I'm expecting to just get ideas out. I didn't expect to get distributed by Simon & Schuster. I did not expect to be featured at a presidential library. I did not expect to be on this podcast, where I get a chance to illustrate both sides and being comfortable to talk to both sides. Because usually, again, that's not Vogue. That's not viral. That's something that's calm and pleasant and pleasing, but not something that usually gets 250,000
Sure.
clicks, except for you all's podcast.
And be friends
Yes.
with people from both sides.
Yes.
I want to reiterate that, because that is such a huge polarizing time right now, that this does not exist at all. We literally have all 3 at this point. You know, because I tend to feel, me and Jen have said several times, I feel that you are so much more in the middle. And I'm more left middle, and Jen's obviously right. And it's a prime example that 3 different demographics are sitting here and not just respecting one another, but are building friendships. That's the core of it. And unfortunately, we don't grow as fast as others because we're not harming, hating, or picking on each other.
Yeah.
But this is what America was supposed to be, Derek. They wrote, and they even talked about this in the Federalist Papers, and I mentioned this in the book. They created our government in a way so that our society could survive people from different backgrounds with different interests, pulling back and forth, but keeping us strong so that it never went too far one way or another. So that people could be, and it goes back to this thing, people could be empowered, not just one side has all the power. And unfortunately, we have defined our politics and our public policy as exercises now to see who can get power. If I can just get enough seats in XYZ legislature, we can drive through our agenda, not work with the people to get our agenda done or do what's best for the people. Drive through our agenda. That's not a way to lead people. Now, it might be a way to legislate people and be successful legislatively with quote unquote wins. But the book was written for leadership. It was written to remind us of what we can be. That's a different goal than just saying, hey, and this is why I think we should pick up 30 extra seats in the House of Representatives. It's a completely different task. It's a completely different goal. And I think it's the wrong vision per se as well.
And you mentioned Lanny in your answer there. And that's another beautiful part of this book. And really, I think gave me a chance to get to know you as an individual and also your wonderful wife.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful story between the 2 of you. So that's included in this book as well, which I think gives a lot of depth to your kind of concepts and feelings in the book, which is wonderful.
Can I mention that real quick? This is something I think people overlook, and I know we have other questions to get to, but I would love to say this quickly. I look at a Venn diagram of one in some regards as being a love story. To
I can
me,
see that.
in some regards, it's a Black love story, because you don't usually see a lot of African Americans that get a chance to show in modern times how to fight and struggle and get past obstacles to get to the other side. We live in a society, and you and I grew up in a world where at least half the marriages ended in divorce. I mean, latchkey kid generation, right? So to be able to show young people again that a couple can go through some of the most difficult situations and stay together, stay in love, and accomplish their goals. I think that I know a lot of people will see a Venn diagram of one, they will see the cover, they will see different things in the book and think of it more as public policy or civics. But I don't want people to overlook the fact that I think there's a unique love story there that Lainey and I share that is deeper than romance, but it's genuinely a love story.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually a love story on multiple levels, because it's a love story for your country too.
Yes, absolutely.
I would thank you, Jen, for saying that. 'Cause- go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, and there are times in the book where I'm not saying that you didn't love your country, but certainly you were going through things in your life and maybe didn't have the same confidence in your surroundings and your community in your country. And to see you kind of grow through those things through your experiences and become who you are now, and have your views that you have now, I think that was part of where I found the hope in this book.
Right.
Because there were certain instances in the book where I was like, no, that's me right now. That's how I feel about things right now. And then to continue on with you explaining concepts and to kind of see yourself through that, it's
And
really.
I did, Jen, and I do agree with Jen completely on this, in the way, like, I took it more, you hit the words when you said, love your country and all that. It was almost a memoir to an American dream,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It does.
Because American citizen struggles everyday life just like most of us have, barrier after barrier, breaking down obstacle after obstacle, while having a family that loves you, that supports you, that admires you, that you admire. And then you go with your family, your wife, through trials and tribulations, coming on top, still with all of the divisiveness, making something of yourself, your wife making something of herself, your family making something of themselves together. That really is the American dream. That's what we have sold for 250 years here. And so to go into, you almost, when you read the book, you almost have to not let your brain say, okay, it's a book about politics or it's a book about this. You just have to open the book and read it with a genuine open mind, because you learn so much more, I feel, than the political aspect of that, because politics are just one part of unification and uniting.
Yes.
Of a community. And again, Jen said it just so perfectly. It really is a good book to talk about. The American dream was never supposed to be easy.
No, it's not. And I know we need to get back to questions, but a Venn diagram of one almost perfectly describes what the book is as well. Not just a description of me, but just what the book is, which is,
Absolutely.
It's not a policy book. It's not a politics book. It's not a pure autobiography. It's a little bit of all of those things, while also trying to reflect to people, hey, we've done these things together for 250 years from all different corners of the country. These are things we need to get back to in order to do it again.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into the next question that I want to ask you. So one phrase that you do continually go back to in the book that really struck me was the difference that you draw between inflection points and reflection points. And basically, in a culture that rewards immediate outrage and reaction, which we've been discussing, everything's now, how do we get people, not just young people, which obviously we've referenced them, but everybody in this country, to stop long enough to actually think and listen?
Trust and relationship. Jen, we don't trust each other anymore. And let's just be clear, people that have platforms, whether you're in politics, public policy, media, and the like, we haven't given collectively people the need or the reason to trust us collectively. And if you don't have trust, you can't have relationship. And if you don't have relationship, you can't move people to a point of time where they're actually thinking about what's transpiring. Things just happen to them.
Yeah.
Versus the flip side of that, which is instead of an inflection point, something happens and you just kind of react. A reflection point is something happens. Why did it happen? Is it repeating a pattern? Is it a new pattern? Is it something that I did, or is it just something that transpired? Then what do I want to do moving forward? That is what we need to do, but we can't do that without trust and without relationship. One of the things that I really try to do with my life, with my career, and it's reflected in a Venn diagram of one. I want to provide those bridges, no pun intended, to the cover, but I want to provide those bridges where people can start connecting and having relationship once again. If they have relationship, we can then talk, we can move through it. And again, to that point that Derek brought up earlier, if we disagree, but we're friends, you're going to pick up the phone tomorrow. We're going to go to the coffee shop again next Saturday at 8:30 in the morning. We're going to continue the conversation. We're going to reflect upon what we disagreed upon. And then maybe where are the commonalities that we did say, okay, I get your point, and then move forward from there. Government's supposed to work that way. Education's supposed to work that way, especially at higher levels of education. Not supposed to be far left or far right. It's supposed to work that way in the workplace. It's supposed to work that way in our communities. Once we get back to doing that, especially with the robust diversity that we have today, we could really take America to another level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's from all walks too. I mean, you have, again, one great thing about being a hairstylist and a salon owner is me and Bonsell have had the blessing to have every walk of life come into our building. And you get opinions from, baby boomers to the Gen Zs and all in between. We had a client the other day. We were talking about the podcast and how much she admired me and Jen and how it's been so refreshing to finally hear something where people are just coming together. And she said, because I have to tell you, she said, village, we have no village anymore. Village doesn't exist. Yeah. And I was confused because you hear community and stuff like that. And I asked her to break it down. She said, and she went back to the just good old days about people could leave their doors unlocked. She said, yes, there was crimes, but there was communities lifted up their everyone's children. They, you were also reprimanded by everybody in the community. It was a community, a safety zone, a net to where no matter what you look like, what you believed in, what you loved, there was still some type of respect and admiration. And to hear that from somebody in their almost 70s now, one thing that is similar is most people are now starting to feel the same thing, which is loneliness, separation, and
isolation.
Yeah. And two, when you go to family real quick, and then family, we've been raised that we listen, we can disagree in our family, and we love I'm sure you, Lenny, all the time have disagreements with your kids, especially knowing you two now. I'm sure they are very strong-willed.
Oh, yes.
They have a strong mind of their own, but you love and respect your children for their thoughts and their opinions. So if we as Americans, we raise our own families to do that way, there really is no excuse to treat anybody such than that.
Exactly.
And again, that's where my confusion always sets in, because if you can do it at home, why can't you do it walking down the street?
And I'll say this, I know we want to get back to the questions, but too many people, and I said this, I think before the last time I was here, too many people love America, but don't love Americans. And when you love Americans, that means you love the diversity of America. One of the questions that came up with the Reagan Foundation was, why is that the case? And I said, well, American used to define the diversity. You say American, and it could mean literally 500 different things.
And that's what it's meant to everybody around the world.
Yes.
I mean, that was what people looked to America for.
But we stopped doing that, Jen.
I know.
And as a result of that, we have said we're going to define American, a red-blooded American, a person that loves America is not somebody that's gay. It's like, wait, what? I was in the military for 15 years. Or what do you mean? I pay taxes. I give $25,000 a year to a scholarship fund.
Yeah.
What do you mean I don't love America? Well, that's not American. No, America has a definition that is bigger than any one thing or any one delineation that pushes somebody aside. Because if you look at the history of America, you can find a reflection of all three of us at this table, and the two behind the scenes, and the 500 people at the fair, and on and on.
Yep.
That's the beauty of saying American, but we have truncated the definition of that word, and it's a crime. And it's a crime that's harming us as a country, both domestically and internationally. And to your point, Jen, the rest of the world sees us that way. It's time for us to see ourselves that way again as well.
Absolutely. Now, you write about another idea in the book, and it really kind of struck me on so many levels, personal levels, my political levels, my day to day. But you write about hurt people hurting people. And it really made me kind of think about things because it's so incredibly true. I think a lot of the things that are happening on a daily basis are coming to be because people are hurt.
Yeah.
How much of what, in your opinion, we're witnessing in America's political anger, do you think is genuinely about policy? And how much is people carrying unresolved fear? Because I think there's a huge amount of fear in our country these days, pain and resentment. I think there's a lot of that in there.
I think it's definitely half and half. People forget that there was a time where they still talk about it. The Democrat Party overlooked flyover country, overlooked rural Pennsylvania, overlooked rural and exurban North Carolina. And that happened after 2008, the rise of then Senator Barack Obama into the presidency. And by 2016, you both had the Tea Party movement and the rise of MAGA, which led to Donald Trump. You look at some other factions that have happened over the course of history, whether it's based on economics. People forget that the vast majority of xenophobia that's happening in America isn't because people don't like the color of people's skin. That is obviously part of it. But a lot of it is because, and I don't want you taking my job. If there were enough jobs, you can be a little bit more libertarian and live and let live. The moment there's economic competition, academic competition, communal competition, those differences, if you're not careful, get used against us. And that's where the fear comes into play, because people want to be able to provide for their families. But we have made America such a zero-sum game. We're talking about the American dream. And one of the things I bring up in the book, a Venn diagram of one, is the American dream was not supposed to be an economic dream. We made it an economic dream after World War II with the growth of suburbs, and then the 1980s, and we're kids of the 1980s, and we went through that era of excess, and we beat the Soviet Union, and then we had the 90s without a whole lot of wars and economic growth there, and we intentionally or otherwise redefined what the American dream was. And when you do that and it's just chasing dollars, then it's very easy to go, I'm going to chase these dollars by any means necessary. Does that mean I'm going to be an OnlyFans star? Does that mean I'm going to go rob a bank? Does that mean I'm going to sell drugs? Does that mean I'm going to go on YouTube and say the most outrageous things? Not because I believe it, but because I know I can get paid to sit in my house and say the most outrageous things, and I can be a quote unquote star. The stars on our flag were not to reflect the most popular people in our society. The stars on our flag were supposed to reflect those North Star ideals that we're supposed to be pursuing. Now, I know they represent the 50 states. I get that. But it's also supposed to be more, which is, what are we trying to aspire to be when we're our best selves? And having those best self examples reflecting something that people can see, even when it's dark outside, even when people can't see, they can look up and they can see those examples.
It's symbolic.
We have forgotten about that. And because we have redefined leadership, statesmanship, what it means to be valuable in this society, we've made it about how many people follow you, not about what you do as a child of God and as an American. We have redefined those things as well as the American dream. And as a result, we've lost our way. The book tries to show us these are things we did for 250 years, not what we're doing right now.
Yeah, and I was talking yesterday about how I see things shifting. It's a really good point that you make, that it has become, the American dream has become economic. And that isn't the entire basis of the American dream. It was freedom of religion. It was to be able to raise your family safely. Simple concepts like being able to own your own land.
Yep.
I mean, that's what the original founding fathers came over here to be able to do. And we have definitely lost sight of all of those other things that we hoped for within this country. However, and I'm going to bring my daughter up just very briefly, and then we can move on to the next question. I do see that our younger people, again, people that are in their 20s, are craving those types of things again and those moral things again. It's very strange. I saw, when I was in high school, prior to my time, you saw individuals that would meet their partner in high school, they would get married and they would live together forever. And we kind of lost that, right? It kind of in those 80s and 90s that you're talking about when it became an economic focus.
Yes.
I'm seeing that change, that tide shift a little bit. My daughter has multiple friends who have been in long-term relationships. They're starting to build ideas of a more traditional family path and talk about marriage and who's going to go to college first. And like all of these things that we used to do a couple of generations ago, because they're craving that.
My daughter and son-in-law have been together since they were 15 years old.
Yeah,
They've
it's
been together
changing.
going on 20 years now.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Married and high school sweethearts, college sweethearts, grad school sweethearts, married, kids already. It's so to your point, but you know what it is, Jen? It's because what America promises through constitutional protections are protections to God-given rights. So when you start talking about God-given rights, it supersedes partisanship. It supersedes, what part of the country you grew up in. Because once God puts that right, that inspiration, that vision inside of you, it's the Constitution's job. It's America's job to protect it. Because if it's coming from God, it's going to be good. It's going to be wholesome. It's going to contribute to the greater good. And it's going to allow you to have a fulfilled life. That's what young people are looking for today. That's what, again, the promise of America is supposed to be getting us back to.
Yeah. And I think real quick, Jim, before the next question, if you don't mind, about the hurting and then going right into naively, for example, and that experience, just that age range. On the positive side of it, all their disappointment is making them, that generation, want to fight again. And I think that's important because for me, I'm hurt because I'm 40 years old and me and my husband work 6 to 7 days a week and I can't buy a home because I can't afford to buy the home. That my husband at 45 years old walks around with a passport because the way he looks, which I found out 3 weeks ago as I asked for his passport because we're going on a cruise. And I said, "Where's your passport?" He said, "Oh, I've been carrying it with me because when we had that conversation, you were right. Maybe I should just have it on me just in case." That is what breaks my heart. And that's what hurts me. And when you have no direction and you're in a country with millions of people, but yet every individual feels lost, it's so easy to hurt and harm one another because of that, because you have nothing to believe in anymore.
Yes.
And I just want the basic American dream that my parents had. I mean, my parents made half of what me and Bonsell make now. We had this conversation about a month ago, and my parents owned homes. They owned cars. I make double than my parents even do now, and I can't afford the things that they used to be able to afford. And that trickles down to just chaos within your life because you're tired, you're exhausted, you're grueling to constantly prove to yourself and people. But when you're just doing it to survive and feeling like you should be thriving, and instead you're only surviving, it's an exhaustion.
Yes.
And I'm glad to see the younger generation is saying, "Oh, we aren't doing that. That's not going to happen." So I'm hoping we need some of them in politics.
Yeah, basically they are, like you said, craving those God-given rights again. And faith runs throughout the entire story in this book and your story within this book. You refer often to the soft, still voice, which just those words together feel good, like in my soul.
It feels home.
When I was reading them in the book. And I just love that kind of phrase because I just think it's super important. I think it's something that when you're feeling unsettled, you can think about the soft, still voice to me personally, that's God, but to whatever your kind of thing is, providence. And you also refer to trail magic. When I first heard those two words, I thought you were referring to like the political trail. And then as I read the book, it made much more
Yeah.
sense. And I truly, strongly, personally believe in trail magic, although I may call it something
It needs to be a
different.
t-shirt, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, can can you explain how has your Christian faith challenged your politics rather than simply reinforce what you already believed?
Mhm.
And for someone who doesn't share your faith, because some of our listeners don't, we know where I am and where Derek is. What lesson from that part of your journey still applies to them?
My faith is my obligation to other people and to God. My faith is not necessarily theirs. Now, ideally, if they want to learn more about, Catholicism or the life of Jesus Christ, the promise of Jesus Christ, the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, that is something I can do. But when you are a child of God spiritually and secularly an American that's trying to do right by the country, your job is not to profess your faith through words and through evangelization. Your job is to profess your faith through works, through how you treat people, how you lead, how you problem solve, how you meet people where they are and then help them get to a better place in time. That's a different mission. That's a different journey. And one of the things I learned over the last 20 years is that I thought that would be easy because everybody says they want it until you start giving it to them. I look back at what I've been doing over the last 20 years and I realize, both the left and the right told me I was crazy for doing this because this is hard work. I told them it wasn't as hard as you think it is. No, it is very hard work. And, over the last several years, I've had to make the conscious decision to say, okay, God put me on this path to do this. So I need to, even when I'm discouraged, even when I get a little worn, shake it off. There's a quote in the book. I quote Purple Yoda in the book at the end. Is one of my favorite lyric from Prince is from a song called Daddy Pop, where the lyric says, get your life together, stop your crying. Whenever you say that you can't, that's when you need to be trying.
Mm-hmm.
And there are times in my life where I go back to that lyric. And I remember even trying to bring, very divided people together or trying to solve very complex problems during critical situations. My mission with my faith is to do that, even if other people are not as cooperative. And it goes back to something we said earlier, Derek. It's you have to love America and Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And when you love Americans, you're going to love people as a leader more than they may ever love you. And you have to be okay with that. I've learned to be okay with that.
And I think also too, sometimes, I say to Bonsell, when you are the type of human that has a destiny to help others forever and always more than yourself, there is such a thing as our cup being empty more than it's full, because we're giving so much to somebody on the outsource of that. And I think another thing we've forgotten is that it is okay for people that are leaders, that are what I call like American disciples, right? People that are destined to create change in a positive manner, that we forget. And because we're so empathetic, we are like, okay, you know what? I can feel it later. I can feel it later. I can feel it later. And I've learned that we have to also make it a priority to take care of ourselves, because you do get exhausted and burnt out when you are this type of individual that is constantly out to help others before yourself. And I think that balance is important.
So after reading the book, at least 3 occasions that I can think of, I've had someone stuck in a situation, or I've had something said. 2 of them were work scenarios. 1 was a personal. And I literally found myself saying in my head, Jen, stop for a minute.
Yeah.
Listen to the soft, still voice.
Wow. Yes.
And it literally just gave me a moment to kind of pause. It was just a really good reminder with all of the references that you made to it through the book. It really, really stuck with me. And I think
Hmm.
it will for a really long time.
Well,
So
I
I want to
appreciate
thank
that.
you
Thank
for
you.
that.
Thank
I
you.
agree. And it's sometimes the smallest things that are most impactful too,
Absolutely.
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are getting kind of at the end of our time here, and I'm very conscious you have somewhere to be after this. But this last question, I think, is super important, and I really want to end this show with this question. When someone closes the final pages of a Venn diagram of one, what's more important to you? That they agree with you, that they understand you more, which I think they will. I certainly know that I did
Hmm.
after reading the book, or that they begin questioning some of their own assumptions.
It's definitely the third. And I think if they do that, the other two could come about. Less the first one. The first one, we're a diverse country. That may or may not ever happen. Understanding me better, there's a value in that. But the main focus is for us to take a step back and really allow the inflection points of the last 250 years, particularly the last 10 years, to be something that we reflect upon and then pick a new direction. I really want people, after they read this book, to be able to say to themselves, what can I do differently? This
Mhm.
guy that wrote this book has both gone through a lot, but has done a lot, unexpectedly done a lot. I mean, one of the chapters that I think is the most impactful chapter, especially the way I started it, was the last chapter. I don't think anybody, and for those of you out there that please go buy a Venn diagram of one, you go to the last chapter, I think you'll be in for a surprise. Um, to say that these are things that were said to me, everybody can sit there and say, oh, yeah, when somebody got angry with me, I caught my version of these. And it made me feel bad. It discouraged me. It made me say, why am I doing this? Why am I engaging this person? But to then say, hold on, you think that these were the bricks to throw at me to try to harm me. These are the bricks that I then picked up and put on the ground and laid my path moving forward to do the things I'm supposed to do. If people can take that approach to their own lives, they can then start questioning, I was right about this, maybe I wasn't right about that. I was right about this, even though I was by myself. And hey, that guy that wrote a Venn diagram of one had to stand on his own principle when these things happened to him. Maybe I should stick to my guns. Oh, okay, well, maybe I was wrong on this and I can tweak this approach a little
Mhm.
bit. That's what I want people to do. Because Jen and Derek, if readers can do that, then we can start applying that to civic life, to community life, to public policy and political life. Then we can actually heal. That's when the hope comes back in. That's when leadership starts to truly sprout. That's when we can start getting American statesmen back into the play again.
I'm just so proud that you, with your career and the presence that you have on multitudes of different platforms, have chosen to use your voice in this fashion.
Yeah.
Because the book is also brave.
Hmm.
I truly do feel that, which again gave me courage, because this entire concept of our
Yeah.
podcast isn't easy.
No.
It's
It's not.
vulnerable.
It is.
Yes.
It's not easy to have these stances and these opinions, and yet you're choosing to do it. And again, that also gives me hope and strength to continue on the
Doing what
path.
we're doing. And because it's not easy, this is not even what we do, what you do, these are not easy things. And I
They're
feel
not
like
popular.
yeah, and you're running up the mountain way more
Yes.
than you are
Yes, you are.
rolling on down. And, and then you do it in a moment where we live in a time where this side wants you to always be on this side, and this side always wants you to be on this side. And if you are ever in the middle, you're betraying. And me and Jen literally have checked every box that is unpopular technically right now. And real quick before we close up, because I think this is so important. Um, with you having just such a morality in the book, there's so many Americans out there right now that when I talk to them, they say, well, what's the point of voting, or what's the point of getting out there? Because They do what they want on the hill on all sides. They're greedy. They steal. They don't listen to
And they
us.
get
They
away
don't
with
care
it.
what we have to say. They get away with it. I break the law and I'm punished. They break the law and they get privilege. How could you inspire people out there in our community that they still have a voice, they still have purpose, and just because that may be happening right now does not mean that you should just give up? How do you re-inspire people right now when they feel that the rules are completely different for them than they are for people that are leading us, that, by the way, work for us? I think we've forgotten that we are their employer. And I say that all the time. They are our employees. And you hear people all the time say, I've never in my life worked for an employer that I tell them what to do. And I tell them how the world is going to work. How do you re-inspire a community that doesn't believe in it anymore?
One, and I've done this in a Venn diagram of one, you remind them that the beauty of America is when you have security empowerment in play, you'll have the opportunity. I'll never forget a trip I took with the late Reverend Jesse Jackson. And he complimented me. He said, you are a really good Republican. The Republican Party should really be extolling what you do. You're a good example of what they do. But, he flat out said, unfortunately, I think your party's more focused on Confederacy than they are on democracy. They don't want to help everybody.
What one was this? Just curious.
2013.
In timeline. Okay, 2013.
2013.
Okay.
This is Tea Party. This is right as MAGA is starting to emerge. A little tiny bit before MAGA, but long story short, he says that. He goes, I fear that you're going to focus trying to be this right type of Republican, and it's never going to catch wind, and you're going to waste your potential doing this. And I just looked at him and said, well, Reverend, I appreciate the concern. I mean, he's older than my dad.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Reverend, I appreciate the concern, but when you were a little black boy in Greenville, South Carolina, and you kept walking into the libraries and other places, and you were getting yourself in trouble and eventually getting arrested, people said, Jesse, all you're going to do is keep getting yourself arrested. Those white folks are never going to allow you to go to that public library or use that restroom. And that was in the 1960s, Reverend. I said, I went to college in North Carolina in the 1980s, and I can use any library and any restaurant, any restroom I wanted to. So things don't change until they change. He just looked at me and he said, Mr. Lenny, you have a point. I would say that to young people.
Yeah.
Things don't change until they change. And it's up to all of us to be the change that we seek.
And we have way more power than we think we do. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, Jen? I do. What you were going to say something?
Nothing. It was just that this book is another perfect example of those encouragements for individuals to feel empowered and to realize that it starts local in our homes,
yes,
in our churches, in our communities, and that you are right, Derek, that we have a lot more power than we necessarily think that we have. And I think we need reminded of that sometimes. And this book is a very good reminder of that.
Thank you.
And in closing, do you have anything else you'd like to share or say about the book? Obviously, August 11th.
August 11th, the book comes out. You can get it 3 different ways. Ebook, audiobook, or you can get it in hardcover. If you want to be like Derek, you can probably get it in an ebook and have it read to you in French. I don't know.
Okay.
But I know
it's fabulous. There's multiple voices.
French accent. It was just amazing.
I tried the Australian. It didn't connect
well.
Okay.
But there's 3 ways to get the book: ebook, audiobook, hardcover. I would say don't look at the book and think it's a political book. I would say
it isn't.
Look at the book.
It is and isn't.
And say it's a book that touches upon our civics and our community. But what makes us American, particularly in America 250, and how you can find your own reflection in that. So please go pick up a copy of A Venn Diagram of One, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, anywhere books are sold. You can do it online. You can do it in a bookstore nationally.
And it was an amazing read. Yes. I can't wait to get my hard copy. I think I said to you, I am a highlighter. There are certain things when I was reading it, it was like, oh, I need to remember that exactly as it is because I'll use it with somebody in conversation. So I know for a fact once I have my hard copy, I'll be reading it all over again, and I'm sure you'll get random texts from me to like, this part's so good.
Thank you.
I did thoroughly enjoy it. My daughter actually is very excited to read the book as well. She is 18 going on 19, and I had multiple discussions with her. I'm like, there's this part in this book, and it was explaining things to her, and she's like, Mama, I think I want to read that book. She is the exact audience that everybody should be targeted, but certainly those younger folks that we're talking about as well, especially the ones that are truly craving change. I see this generation coming up.
And they're getting angry. I mean, in a positive way.
Yeah.
They are getting angry.
They want difference and change.
And one thing I have said, I'm a huge documentary buff. I love watching documentaries. History after history and all the things I've learned, that is when we've seen traumatic change.
Yeah.
Is when people stand up with no fear, with love and emotion. And that's what we are seeing in that. Speaking of hard copies, please engage in the episode. And you'll have your opportunity and a chance to be gifted a hard copy book of a Venn diagram of one. It was an honor again.
Thank you,
Lenny, for allowing us to have the transcripts.
The honor was mine.
Be jealous out there. I know. It really was an honor. And I'm not a big reader. I've made jokes about that. And the fact that I finished the whole book and I did it in less than a week was, that's a compliment to you, because it's very easy for me to just set something down. Again, thank you so much. It was your second time here. I feel like every time we're around, we have such amazing conversation with you. And again, please, everybody, please support the book. I'm not just saying that because we have Lenny here. It really is an incredible read, like Jen said, and it will inspire you and it will open you up for me, which I think is what most people need right now, is also to remember that you can achieve greatness in a time that you may not feel that you can possess that. This book is living proof of what the American dream looks like, and I really enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. One final thing for everybody out there. We're gonna be Yinzers for just a second.
Okay.
Yes.
This is, as much as it's a civics book, as much as it's about morality and faith and American civics and everything else, you can find a lot of Pittsburgh in it. So Pittsburghers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
This is a book
agree.
that is centered in Pittsburgh, but speaks to the country. And we don't usually get that many opportunities here in Pittsburgh, but this does it. So please support a fellow Pittsburgher in representing us here in Western Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. Thank you again for joining us, Lenny. And everybody out there, this has been another episode of Both Sides of the Fence. I'm Jen McIntyre.
And I'm Derek. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And if you also like this next episode with Lenny McAllister on a Venn diagram of one, please share that as well for anybody out there that you think may get some help from it. We love you all. Take care of one another out there, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys. Bye.